Grab your pen and paper, ladies and gentlemen, because we will start questioning ourselves for today's video. Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning back in. I know it's been a hot minute since my last video, and I just want to thank y'all guys because there's already a lot of you guys here. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. I'm getting shy. So, in return, I would like to talk something more useful, more helpful, and more exciting for today. And I would like to apologize in advance if you're going to hear some weird background noise from time to time. I'm doing my best. You know, I'm doing my best. And I'm also very nervous. I get this question a lot. A lot of people would ask, where do I actually start when I want to build my home? And for a lot of people, the process is very exciting yet very overwhelming. And I think a lot of them would start to ask, like, how much does it usually cost for this specific house size in this specific location? But it actually takes a lot of research beforehand and self assessment before we actually get into figures. Okay, let's do this. Step number one, the art of assessing. Let's start with the basics, but before we start listing down all the things that we want, let's start first if there are any restrictions or limitations that you actually have to take note of. So if you're like starting your house from the ground up, take note if you're living in a subdivision, usually there's like a guideline that you can actually request from your HOA. So take note of that because there are some subdivisions that are quite strict with how the facade looks like and also some other considerations. That also goes for condo unit owners where you have a specific building guideline. It's best to keep yourself updated and aware as early as possible before you actually dive into the details of what you actually want to do. I think it's also helpful when you're doing like site assessments. If you're going to aim for a pre-made house, like townhouses or like condo units, it's also best to take note of if there are any space restrictions such as low ceilings, limited space. Take note of that so you'd actually have a feel of the space. Let's start listing down the areas that you actually need in your house. And no matter how basic they seem to you, please don't forget to write them down. Like list down living room, dining room, kitchen. How many bedrooms do you need? How many bathrooms do you need? How many floors are you aiming to have? And don't forget your utility rooms if it's applicable to you. So once you have a list of your areas, please take note of the areas that you would classify as heavy use. And by heavy use, this would be the areas that you would spend a lot of time on in terms of tasks. So for example, some people like to have a larger space for their kitchen because they're into heavy cooking in daily use. Some people would prefer having large living rooms because they love to host parties. Some would love to have a large home office because why not? And you can also consider like how many people would actually use it simultaneously. This is so you can have an idea which spaces you would prefer to have more space to compared to the other ones. Once you have classified your heavy use areas, let's dive into the details of each room. Like what are your requirements per room? List down your furniture or any appliances or anything specific that come into your mind. For example, some people in their bedroom, they would prefer to have a king size bed, some larger storage space for their clothes, and also some study desk. If there's any appliance that you would like to have it in your kitchen, for example, this is also to make sure that your requirements can actually fit into these rooms. Let's consider your design must-haves and space considerations. And let's divide this into four. Let's start with user-oriented first. Should the design cater to the elderly, to the PWD, to your pets? Should it be kid-friendly? If there's anyone in your household who has any specific allergies, the most common one would be rhinitis. So usually we try to avoid materials that would be prone to collecting dust. Another one is your storage solutions. So let's start asking if we actually need a lot of storage, like we want to maximize our storage, or do we just want the right amount? And maybe for some people, this would sound like a very dumb question because, of course, I would want to maximize my space as much as possible. But actually, for some people, they actually want to, just have the right amount of storage so they can control their spending habits. You do you, whatever works for you. So, for people who actually want to have just the right amount of storage. Please take note of all the things that you want to keep. For those who actually want to maximize your storage space, take note of what you actually have right now as well. But also take note, how are you going to use this for long-term use? Are you going to have like a collection and you need a storage space for that? Or are you planning to grow your family and you definitely need a storage for their items? Let's talk about the third one, which is maintenance and long-term use, which is something that sometimes is overlooked at because we tend to dream big, not realistically sometimes when we're talking about dream homes. But the most important question is that, will this house be sustainable enough for you to maintain in the long run? Consider how many people will actually help you clean and maintain the house, and also how this will affect your bills or your consumption. In terms of layout and space allocation, you can also consider if you want some sort of flexibility in your house. Like, do you want to have loose furniture over built-in cabinets so you can have more freedom to rearrange the layout from time to time? You also see some rooms being multi-purpose. So, let's consider that as early as possible. I have been filming for over an hour now, and I'm still on step number 2. Anyway, let's do this. Step number 2, the art of curating preferences. So, I want you guys to tread carefully on this tip because this is the part where everyone gets overstimulated with a lot of well curated photos on the internet, and then you just go into the spiral of questioning yourself, like, what do I want? I really need? Who am I? I will start off with a very, very important tip. Don't stress too much about labeling your style early on. What I've noticed is that when people try to describe their vision for their house as a period style, like someone would say, I want a mid-century modern house. Most of the time, they have no idea what they're talking about. And that's okay. Not everyone has the design knowledge or the time to dig deeper into the theories and history of these period styles. But I just feel that when people try to label their aesthetic early on, it just puts them into unnecessary pressure just so they can fit into a certain category. So I just want you guys to focus first on how you would want your house to feel like. It's just using basic adjectives, like whatever that comes into your mind. You can search like, I want a cozy bedroom, a bright and airy living room, matic bathroom, whatever that feels like it. And please, just a word of advice, please do not use the words Instagrammable or interest worthy, because what does that even mean? For a lot of people, I think they're worried about making things cohesive as early as possible, but don't worry too much about that for now, because once you start curating and reassessing all your peg photos at the end of the day, you would find similar themes and elements. Most of the time, we just tend to save photos because they look interesting or they look nice, but it's not something that we actually want to have in our house. So remove that, let go of that. Okay, once you started cleaning out your peg photos, now you can also start asking yourself, is there anything specific that you actually like from the photo? Is it about the color palette? Is there any material that you actually want to use in your house? Is it the storage solutions they have in this photo? If you can answer anything about the photo that you like other than it looks pretty, then it's worth taking note of. The goal is to find photos that speaks to you, that feels more personal to you, that feels well lived to you. We're halfway through. Step number 3, the art of awareness. Let's do our research. And I know this would take a lot of time for your end, but it's important for you to get exposed to the market prices and also what's available locally. For starters, you can start going on Instagram shops or even like the websites just to get an idea of your preferences, especially for your furniture. Start checking them out. If you could also find the time and catch the occasional material exhibits such as World Bex, Interior Design Manila, which usually happens around the months of March to May. It's usually the time where a lot of suppliers locally would have their stalls there, have their material swatches there, so you could get a list of their prices and also their available products. And if you're wondering, here's a set of questions that you can actually start asking your suppliers. One important thing is that you can ask them how do you actually maintain or clean the materials. Another is, do they offer any warranty of some sort, or do they deliver to your area? And also the lead time, if these are already in stock locally, and if not, how long is the lead time for it to get here? And now let's go to the fourth step, which is the art of prioritization. So now that you're more exposed and more aware of the market prices and also the available materials, let's go back to the list that you actually made in step one, and let's start asking ourselves which ones are our non-negotiables versus our wants. A former client of mine actually made a Notion list of her non negotiables versus her nice to have items. So it was easier for us to check which ones are her basic requirements versus the ones that she would find like a nice upgrade, but at the same time, it wouldn't compromise her quality of life. And I would advise the same to everyone because this step actually makes things easier for you when it comes to negotiating and just cross-checking your budget throughout the construction process. I feel that whenever we make like the list in step one, we tend to go overboard, which is sometimes, not realistic, and it's not something that we actually need. So this is the perfect time where we can actually reassess what we actually need, what are our basic requirements that wouldn't compromise the upgraded quality of living that we're actually looking for in our new home. And doing this step would help you sort out which would be your basic requirements versus the ones that you can upgrade later on. I think some people are falling into the trap of rushing things, rushing to upgrade all at once. But it's also worth noting that your home will always be a work in progress. Take your time. It also takes a lot of consideration to check which items or which areas are you willing to invest on. So it's perfectly okay. Okay, I have been talking for like 2.5 hours now. Step number 5, the art of connecting. Let's get started and let's start connecting with professionals. If you guys are wondering why isn't this step 1, why couldn't I just like ask someone to do all of this for me and just educate me at the end of the day? It's also because we will probably ask you the same set of questions when we meet. So it's really helpful if you already know what you want and what you need. So since you have a much better idea of what you actually need before you get started, this would make things much more convenient for you when you're searching through portfolios and searching for the right designers or team for you. And I think this is also very important because you also have to meet them, whether it's online or personal, because it's very important and crucial that you should be on the same page. Building your home isn't an overnight process. It could take months or even years. So it's really important for you to work with someone who actually understands you and you actually get along with. So yeah, I think that's an anticlimactic way to end this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope this video made sense and I hope I helped you in some ways. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and I would definitely love to hear your thoughts. If you're a homeowner and would like to share your experiences, I would love to hear them, and my comment section is basically open for any healthy discussion. Let me know if you actually enjoyed this. Thank you and see you on the next video.